Hey, pastors and church leaders, my name is Brandon Donaldson. I lead the church partnerships here at YouVersion with Life Church. And we've been talking about hybrid church lately, what it is, what it isn't, and how we can embrace it as a church. And really the most important question is, why are we talking about this? Well, your mission, our mission is critical. And we never want the medium or the method to trump the mission. Mission is always first. So just a quick recap. What is hybrid church? It's creating a integrated, seamless experience with our physical attendance and our online expression of our church. So it's both in-person and digital working together, both and, not a either or. So as you know, YouVersion is part of Life Church, but we recognize Life Church is just one expression of the church and of hybrid church. I'm excited for our conversation today to talk to another local church, Community Christian Church in the Chicago area. And we're going to lean into some of their hybrid solutions and their hybrid thinking, specifically a strategy around micro communities. Hey guys, welcome. It is so good to have you with us during this time. Thanks for being here. For everybody else, this is Pastor Rodrigo Cano, community pastor there at Community Christian Church, and also Pat Nelson, communications director, and much more he could tell you, but what I like to go with is the digital champion. I heard that straight from Pastor Dave Ferguson, so he is the digital champion. We're so glad to have you guys here. So here's where I'd love to start. Just tell us a little bit about your church, about Community Christian Church. Give us a little history and who you guys are.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so Community's been around since 1989. Our lead pastor, Dave Ferguson, and his brother, John, started just a handful of them, launched in local high school here in the Chicagoland suburbs, and now 32 years later has blossomed into what we call one church with four expressions. So we got 9 in-person locations in the suburbs and in the city of Chicago. And then we also have a community online, which we launched in full earnest during COVID. And we have 3C communities, which we're going to dive into a little bit here, but our network of micro churches, church planting, and then Community Freedom, which is our initiative to plant churches inside of prisons. And we have 3 locations here locally, which is just so exciting. But then in addition to all that, Communities also has launched New Thing Network, which is our global church planning network. And something like 3,000 plus churches around the globe now, all kind of unified around the mission of helping people find the way back to God, which is our mission. So that's kind of the heartbeat in and out of everything we do around here.
I love it, man. And we love your church, and so thankful for just that similar heart of you're really all about the capital C church, and you have been for many years. Your leaders have been and have given so much. So, the pandemic altered a lot of things for churches and how we were able to meet, how we're able to engage in community. Many of us, whether we wanted to or not, we're forced online. And so we've been, talking through some of those things. I would love to know, what were some of the things that shifted for you as a church during that time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously our gatherings, completely got shifted online. We did 50 straight weeks of meeting online, so almost a full year. And really, I mean, even just right now, kind of reflecting back to, I think March 15th was the official day that we canceled in-person services, and we really hit the ground running, saying, how do we shift our entire ministry? So everything, not only gatherings, but small groups. What do our serving teams look like, and how do we even respond to the pandemic? So we, quickly launched an initiative called Community Cares, which was able to mobilize people all from, sewing masks to delivering food to people in need, and really just kind of, we call it like hashtag being the church. So we really flipped our entire ministry on the head. Even on the comms team, it was like, I remember late nights of us saying, we got to redo the entire website. Everything is incorrect now for how we operate. So let's figure it out. But a lot of that stuff now has become, ingrained to who we are in this kind of hybrid church future. So it's been really exciting.
Yeah. Well, that's really what we're, wanting to talk through is some, looking at some hybrid solutions is what we're calling it. And, we've talked about what hybrid church is, but specifically, there's one we were going to talk through more that I was just really interested in. I think it would just be so beneficial for churches to hear about, and that's your 3C communities. So I'd love to talk about, what's the purpose behind them? What led you to start leaning into these like micro expressions of your church? Tell us a little bit more about those.
So even before the pandemic, we were already thinking How can we identify leaders? How can we empower leaders? How can we train them and send them out to live out the mission of Jesus, right? Of helping people find their way back to God. We know that not everyone will come to a physical location for whatever reason. And then we were hit with the pandemic. And so we were forced to really rethink, the way that we were doing church. And one of the things that we started doing, even through the pandemic, when we moved everything online, people were still expressing the need to be around other people, right? And so we tried something called watch parties. And basically we invited people to our backyard, coffee shop, somewhere, that is central. And we just were watching the service together. We were watching that video, and then we were having conversations around faith. Once again, we started to think, okay, how can we take it to the next level? How can we implement this into being a part of one of the expressions of community Christian church? And that's when we came out with the idea of a 3C community. And what we say, the definition for 3C community, it's a full but smaller expression of community Christian church that revolves around the three actions or three behaviors that we want on every 3C Christ follower, which is celebrate, connect, and contribute. And celebrate is our relationship with God. How are we celebrating that relationship with Him? Connect is our relationship with other people in the church. And the contribute part is our relationship with the world. And that's basically, what we started to do. And because of that, we developed a whole process to try to launch some of these 3C communities. And so it's 5 phases of a 3C community. And number one, phase one is identifying and assessing. We saw, okay, what are some of the people that have led a small group for some time? They show leadership that they're reproducing, and trying to identify those leaders based on relationship, but based on data as well. And then having with them what we call an IC and U conversation. Then we assess them, and they're very basic assessments, like an APIST, just to see how how God has wired them. So are they apostolic, prophetic, all of those things. Something that we have, a tool that we call Life Map, which is basically a gift inventory. And then we provided them with something that we call the leadership expectations, just to be as clear as possible from the get-go. This is what we're expecting you as a leader, right? Because in a sense, you're going to be their pastor. You're going to be the pastor of that 3C community. So there's some expectations of the things that we want to see in you. And then we had a basic interview where we talk about all of these results, and then we look for alignment. Does it align with what we believe God is calling us to do as a church? And if we believe there's alignment between those things, then we move to the second phase, which is the training and equipping, right? And it's a 14-week training and equipping that is divided into 3 categories. Number one is how to lead from a healthy self. And we use a lot of the tools of Pete Scazzaro and emotionally healthy leadership, all of these amazing tools that are out there. We have an internal tool that we call the RPMs. So how are you relationally, physically, mentally, and spiritually? And then help them create a rule of life that is going to help them be healthy. The second part of the training has to do with what we call the blessed practices. Basically, it is how to live as a missionary wherever you are. And these 5 practices, each one of those letters stand for something. So begin with prayer, listen, eat, serve, and story. I get them mixed up all the time. So basically, how do you live as a missionary where you are? And then the third part of the training has to do with the nuts and bolts. How do we envision, what are some of the rhythms that we see that are going to be beneficial for 3C communities? Then phase 3 is the actual launch of the 3C community, when we talk about finding a person of peace, identifying an apprentice, when are you going to meet, all of these questions, the practical questions. What resources are you going to need? Talking about digital resources, where are you going to find the links, where are you going to find the information, how are you going to use them, what is some of the tech that you're going to need, just making sure that people are aware of those needs. And then once they launch, we have ongoing coaching. That's phase 4. And we believe, once they launch, we believe that ongoing coaching is so key, so crucial, because that way, that'll help us keep the same vision, the same mission, making sure that we're going in the same direction. And so we do that through monthly group coachings, weekly touch point with their coach, something that we call leadership community that revolves around vision casting, huddles, putting them into huddles, and then skills, something that they can learn and can put it into action. And then phase 5, then it's multiplication, right? And so once again, they identify the apprentice, and they've gone through the whole apprenticeship model. I don't know how familiar you guys are, but it's the I do, you watch, we talk, all of those steps into apprenticeship. And when the apprentice thinks he or she is ready, and the leader thinks, that the apprentice is ready, then we take them through the whole process so that we start multiplying. In all honesty, and we're honest, we're starting, so it's like the very beginning of all of this, where we're providing the coaching right now and building those rhythms so they can feel that they're supported. But once again, we are in the same way, going in the same direction, and having one cohesive mission.
So yeah, so you guys are just beginning. So the big difference between this and like groups or watch parties is what you would say is the full expression of your church. So you see in 3C communities where they can have the full expression of what community Christian church specifically, but that full expression of what the church is in that community. And that's sort of the difference. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the main difference. I mean, usually in churches, and I'm not saying all churches, but usually in churches, the small group is more like an assimilation
Right.
type of thing that we do, right? You come to one of our physical locations, you come to one of our services, and then we put you into a small group so you can start learning and start building relationships and stuff like that. Right. But for a lot of people, their entry point to church is their 3C community. For a 3C community, that's their entry point. And they're building the relationships there, and they're living those three practices of celebrating, connecting, and contributing. So it's an intentional, missional way that you engage people in your community and the places where you work, where you live, where you play, and you grow as a 3C Christ follower. So that's the main one of the main differences. Yeah.
No, it's great. And I know you guys, just to be clear, have small groups, so it's a part of the play. But just these expressions like community online is one of them. And then obviously they're at your campuses, and then in the prisons you have this full expression as well. So that's what's really, really cool about this. And one of the things that I love about this is for many people, we talk about in-person, online, and with hybrid we're always talking about it's not either or, it's both and. This is very in-person. I mean, this is people in person, building community, being the church in all aspects, right? So I want people to sort of see, they see that piece. But on the training part of leaders, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but where do you use sort of that both and? Where does the digital come in? And how do you just went through 5 phases. There is some serious training to any of your leadership pipeline because it's a serious deal. So how does that work, practically speaking, with 3C communities? And I think this would be helpful for our community to hear.
We rely a lot on the digital resources that we have through Community Christian Church. And I think that's the beauty of being connected to a larger church, right? That we have all of these resources, everything that we build for community online and even for the physical locations are available to these leaders. So even thinking about the training, right? We have all of these language that I talk about, like the RPMs, the blessed practices, all of these language that we have digital resources around those things. And all the training has been done online. Like the whole training has been done online. We have only met in person once. And I was sharing with you, we started a 3rd cohort of leaders, and we have someone from Mexico, Chihuahua, Mexico, and then we have someone who is in India, who when we meet here at 7 p.m., it's 5:30 the next day for him. And once again, we're able to use all of these resources because we have digital resources, the communication team, the production team, all of these things that are already there and that are being produced, we're able to use them and provide them to the 3C community leaders.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. So they're creating all of this relationship on a daily basis or even weekly, but yet as leadership, you're pouring into these people and creating community even with your leaders, I know, but you've only met, in person one time. And I'm sure that's pretty special. And I'm sure you look forward to the next time as well. So, but it's just neat to see that solution. So let me ask you this, what are you guys hoping to see as a church, from this model? What's some of the things you're hoping to see? I know it's pretty new, so some of it maybe you're starting to see, but what are you hoping to see, and how does this play into all that you're doing?
You want me to take that?
Yeah.
Oh man. I mean, we're hoping to see this be a new movement of the church. Honestly, I think we're seeing around the globe that this is kind of the up and coming movement, if you will. And to borrow some of like our lead pastor Dave's language, he's like, if this is the one thing I would buy stock in, it would be 3C communities, because we really think that this smaller cohort of people, like ingrained in the community where you're at, because on our training stuff, we're only saying that these are 16 to 50 people, so they're a lot smaller, in terms of like some of our physical locations, but there's this kind of beautiful community that can develop. And we were talking, earlier when we were prepping for this too, but just kind of like maybe some of the mental barriers that might come down for people about church when they actually enter somebody's living room, or, hey, we're doing church at the bar on the corner, and this is where our church is. So we're really hoping that this will be a way to engage people that maybe would be, so far, turned off by the traditional church experience in a building. And like I said, we're hoping to see a movement. So how many do we have right now, like launched and in training?
We started 4. Second cohort is about to start 5 in the fall, and then the third cohort who is they're planning to start in the spring. So
that's 3 people, right?
Yeah, 3 people.
So 12 already, and
right.
Sky's the limit, honestly. Like we have in Mexico, LA, Chicago, India. We're really hoping to see this become a global movement of people finding the way back to God. And with our leadership stuff, we're very thorough. We want to empower people to do what God has called them to do. And it's just such a cool way to say, hey, even like this can be like bi-vocationally. You might have this dream of being a pastor, but it might actually be more attainable than you ever thought. And we want to help resource you and have like he said, having the back of Community Christian Church, having the strength of, what community as a whole is. You don't have to worry about social media and resources and links. Like everything is online. We've streamlined everything to be a hybrid solution, to fit one church in 4 expressions, not just one church in 9 locations like we used to be. So the future's bright, and we'll see what God does with it.
I love it. You just mentioned something there too about this is a solution for people that want to be a part of this church, but maybe in a different expression, and you're willing to let go of, maybe what that means for what we see in a campus or an online community. These are different. But the thing that really I pulled out of that was the opportunity for leaders and pastors, ministers, to actually lead in something they didn't think was possible, but this would be the perfect expression for them, is a really cool way to look at this and to think about the multiplication kind of aspect. I think the last thing on that note, because we talked about this a little bit, and Pat, I know you might have something to say as well, but and Rodrigo, you are part of a campus, so you have campuses, and you have 3C communities, and you have online community, as well as your prison communities. But those 3 expressions, how would you sort of see the differences? Sort of the some of the strengths in each one that are that you can pull from each one, and how you lead those, because they're quite different, and they require some different kinds of mindsets, and it takes a big deal for leadership to say, okay, what we do in a campus can't happen in these 3 communities and online communities. So I'd love to hear how those 3 play together and what you see as some strength in those.
The first thing is we're figuring it all out still. So just like every church in the world is, but I think we're embracing it well. So like what that means for us is, from a staffing perspective, like we've said, hey, all of our staff are hybrid staff. So meaning like, what might have been only a Sunday morning responsibility in building, like we want you to just think like, how are you thinking? How are you activating your gifts during the week, maybe, or maybe still on Sundays to help this like digital community continue to thrive. So that's kind of like phase 1 for us. But with community online, we're just scratching the surface, from a creative and communication standpoint, the resources we're creating, the content we're creating, like we really try to find ways to utilize it and integrate it into everything. So our community online product, for lack of a better word, is used in our 3C communities. It's used in our community freedom, and there are also like video elements that we tend to do in our location, like physical location services. So it's really kind of, this beautiful hybrid like approach that, I'll be honest, it's not perfect, and we're figuring it out still. But like I feel like like I said, we're embracing it and trying to take these next steps.
It's like we're using stories that are happening in 3C communities and sharing them with all community online, with all locations, stories of transformations, of stories of people stepping into leadership because of that. And even as someone who leads a physical location and that's leading 3C communities, the way that I see our location is like this center for developing and training leaders so that we can send more people out, right? So that we can, in a sense, from our location, support what's happening in our community online, because we know it's an awesome tool that a lot of people are going to be engaging in that. So if they need prayer teams, if they need digital small groups, who in our centers can we send out to do that? Same thing with 3C communities, right? Who in our locations already are passionate about engaging their people, their friends, where they work, where they live, where they play. And same thing with the prison system. I had the privilege to lead one location that is close to a rehab center, and we're getting some of those people in, and they're saying, "Oh, I want to help my friends, so I want to be part of community freedom because I have family members, or I have people who are in the prison system." So, as you're saying, right, this hybrid idea of my mindset as a pastor is no longer just my physical location. How can I make my physical location grow? But it's, okay, how can I support community online? How can I support 3C communities? How can I support community freedom? And still, how can I engage my physical location, my community, right in Aurora, to let them know that there's a church that cares for them? So I think that's the challenge for a lot of us, like trying to change our mindset. But I think that's the future of the church.
If I might just say one, you kind of brought up like the cool, almost like ecosystem we've like created. So we're seeing people that have exited the prison system who were a part of community freedom now attend our locations online. And even we have dreams to say, well, we want to plan a 3C community of people that are exiting the prison system. We want to start like a church where they're going to feel accepted and welcomed, and they already know 80-90% of the DNA because they've been a part of community. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah, I love it. I love the way that you are pushing it through to your people and you're pushing it through to your staff. Sort of answers the next question, but I'm going to ask it just to close this out, if there's any other thoughts, because the micro community, some people might be watching this, and you are part of leading churches through many of the networks you're part of and the new thing. So I know that that's the kind of stance your church is, and I love that about you guys. But not everybody, is able to do, or they might feel a little overwhelmed with micro communities and 5 faces, and or it's online community. What have you learned during the process of this embracing hybrid church that you could maybe just speak into and be applicable to all of these church leaders that might be watching this?
I mean, a couple of things. One of them is that it takes time. I think we've said it a few times already, but we're just trying it out, and we're going to see how that goes. So I think it's a time, being a very pastoral, it's extending grace to people and extending grace to ourselves. I think we have to keep that in mind. The other thing is, do not be afraid of trying things. Not everything is going to be super successful, but let's just try a few things. And I think that goes back to a little bit of letting go of the control. And trusting God once, but also trusting, the leadership of people, that God is already at work in people's hearts and people's mind, that God is already at work in our communities, and He's already doing something, even if that means that we let go a little bit of the control of how things might look like, or how, what is the outcome. A 3C community that is getting people that were previously incarcerated is going to look way different than a celebration service in Naperville. And so I just gotta be aware of those things, and gotta let go a little bit of that control and say, okay, God, you're at work, and we're trusting and we're empowering these leaders. They know their context better than us. Let's trust them. Trust that you are working in them and through them, and just trust the whole process. So I would say that, and then, what are you good at? What God has called you to do, and run with that.
That's good. Yeah. I think the whole, what we say around here, our leader, Pastor Craig, sometimes you can have control or you can have growth, but you can't have both. And so I think that's what we're learning in this season. And I love how you guys are just showing that and stepping into something like 3C communities, which could look like that. However you call it, it's just going to look different, and should, if you're really going to empower it to be all it can be, than a campus. But yet, what could God do is the question that's most exciting, and what will He do? We're excited to see as well. So, man, so how can people, before we get off of here, how can people find your church or find more about 3C communities? Where can people go?
Yeah, communitychristian.org is our website. It's got links to everything you could ever imagine. Like specifically with 3C Community, you can go to communitychristian.org/lead, and that is a place kind of to take a first step and set up that that interview process and assessment and everything. If you're looking to start one or learn more, like we do want to be for like the Big C Church. We do want to try to resource and help as best you can. So yeah, seriously, even myself, like feel free to reach out, even just about hybrid communications, whatever it needs to be. That's probably the best place.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you guys so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time. Thank you for Community Christian. I know your leadership is such a blessing to all of us in the Capital C Church. You guys, what you're doing specifically, I'm just excited how this kind of conversation can help others figure out their own hybrid solutions. So we hope that you love this conversation. It was helpful to you and to your church. And I want to encourage you, take some time and process this with your staff. What does hybrid church mean for you? And remember, there's more information, there's more conversations around hybrid church at uversion.church.